Some people feel emotions. Pisces absorbs them. Not just their own, but the tone of the room, the unspoken tension in a conversation, the sadness someone else hasn't admitted yet. If you've ever felt emotionally exhausted for no clear reason, if you've ever needed to disappear just to feel like yourself again, if you've ever been told you're too sensitive when you were simply aware, this isn't weakness. It's perception without armor. Welcome to AstroMind, where astrology isn't treated as fantasy, but as a language for understanding the mind. Pisces is ruled by Neptune, the planet of dissolution, imagination, and boundarylessness. Psychologically, this means Pisces doesn't experience clear emotional borders. Where other signs feel their emotions, Pisces feels the emotional field. They don't just walk into a space, they merge with it. This is why Pisces often struggles to explain what they're feeling. By the time they notice the emotion, it may not even belong to them. From a psychological perspective, Pisces shows traits similar to high emotional permeability. They are deeply empathic, but empathy without boundaries comes at a cost. They feel everything, including what others avoid. One of the biggest misunderstandings about Pisces is the idea that they're passive or weak. In reality, Pisces endures constant emotional stimulation. Imagine living without an emotional filter. Every interaction leaves residue. Every tone carries weight. Over time, this creates fatigue. So Pisces adapts, not by hardening, but by escaping. Pisces' relationship with reality is complex. They don't reject reality because they're immature. They retreat because reality often feels too loud, too sharp, too demanding. Psychologically, Pisces uses dissociation and imagination as coping mechanisms. This is where daydreaming, fantasy, spirituality, art, music, and altered states come in. Not as indulgence, but as relief. When Pisces escapes, they're not avoiding responsibility. They're trying to regulate an overloaded nervous system. Here on AstroMind, this is where we separate stereotype from psychology. Emotionally, Pisces operates through absorption rather than reaction. They don't explode. They dissolve. When hurt, they don't always confront. They withdraw, fade, or quietly reshape themselves to reduce friction. This is why Pisces can stay in situations that drain them longer than they should. They sense pain, but they also sense potential, redemption, and unseen layers. Psychologically, this creates a pattern of self-sacrifice without recognition. Not because Pisces wants to suffer, but because they feel responsible for emotional harmony. In relationships, Pisces loves deeply but not always safely. They don't fall in love with who someone is, they fall in love with who someone could be. This is where fantasy becomes dangerous. Pisces has an extraordinary capacity for compassion, but without boundaries, compassion turns into erasure of self. They may ignore red flags because they feel the pain underneath them. They may stay because leaving feels like abandonment, even when staying costs them their peace. This isn't naivety. It's emotional over-identification. One of Pisces' strongest gifts is intuition. They sense undercurrents others miss. They notice emotional shifts before words are spoken. Psychologically, this comes from deep subconscious processing. Pisces lives close to the unconscious mind, dreams, symbols, emotional memory. That's why they're often drawn to art, music, healing, storytelling, or spirituality. These aren't hobbies. They're translation tools, ways to express what can't be said directly. But intuition without grounding can turn against them. Pisces may absorb narratives that aren't true. They may confuse empathy with obligation. They may lose themselves in someone else's emotional story. Healing begins when Pisces learns that compassion does not require self-destruction. Here on AstroMind, this is the turning point. A healed Pisces doesn't stop feeling. They learn where they end and others begin. They still empathize, but they don't merge. They still imagine, but they don't escape. They still care, but they don't carry what isn't theirs. This version of Pisces becomes quietly powerful, emotionally wise, creatively expressive, spiritually grounded instead of spiritually scattered. Pisces was never meant to be hardened. They were meant to be anchored. to feel deeply without drowning, to love without dissolving, to sense everything and still remain whole. That's the psychology beneath the sign. Not weakness, not illusion, depth. You have been watching AstroMind.